TM Legal for sponsoring our name badges today, and also to Intercash, who've been an amazing supporter of ours. They've supported all of our pre-conference get-togethers as well, so we bring all of our speakers and sponsors together the night before. So just wanted to give a big shout out to all of those organizations that you can see on screen now. So yeah, as I said, I'm Joe. I'm General Manager for FinTech North, and I just want to explain a little bit about who we are, what we do, the role that we play within the Northern ecosystem. So FinTech North was set up back in 2016, really as a response to London centricity within the UK fintech economy. If we rewind back to then, all of the fintech networking, all of the fintech fundraising was happening in London. And my two founding directors, Julian Wells, who you'll hear from shortly, and Dan Rajkumar, they both basically said, why are we doing this? Why are we going down to London all the time? We've got some great people here in the North. There's some amazing innovation happening. We should be doing this in our own back garden. And FinTech North was started as a one-day event initially in Leeds. We then expanded over to Manchester in 2018 and hosted a conference there. In 2019, we hosted a Liverpool conference and a Newcastle conference, so it kind of became a pan-Northern organization at that point. I think the year before, we'd hosted an event in Liverpool as well, which Julian will mention in a second. And since then, we've tried to evolve FinTech North, become more than just an events company. We're a community of people who are interested in fintech, who work in fintech. We exist to bring that community together, but we also exist to develop the sector in the north of England, so support entrepreneurs and scale-ups as well as startups with profile opportunities at our events, and also business development opportunities, providing connections and introductions wherever we can. We're also here to make sure that that doesn't happen in silos, and that actually what's going on here in Liverpool and across the wider north takes place as part of a national UK landscape when it comes to fintech. So making sure that some of the public sector organisations like the Bank of England, the HM Treasury are aware of what's going on in the north, and likewise making sure that all of our innovators, you in the room today, are aware of big national initiatives and you can be plugged into that national landscape. Finally, we try and promote the north as a centre of excellence and do that in a neutral way. We try and promote the north as one region so that we can compete and differentiate ourselves on an international stage. All of that's quite big picture. What does that mean on a day-to-day basis? Well, primarily it means bringing people together for events, conferences, trade missions, but also working across a few other areas like skills and international trade as well. This slide kind of visualizes everything that we're about, and the main thing I like to highlight here, other than today being our 119th and I think it's our 16th conference or 15th conference today, which is amazing. We're entirely self-funded, so that's something else I wanted to mention. We are not a public sector organization. We rely on the support of like-minded individuals and organizations to come on board, take a partnership, take a sponsorship, and fund our activity so we can continue doing the work that we do. On that note, on screen now are some of our amazing partners. Like I said, without these guys, we would not be able to bring you all together. So a huge thank you to all of the organizations that we work with on an annual basis. And if anybody's interested in working with us, I'd love to have a chat with you, have a chat with Ryan as well. He's here today, and we can work something out. That'd be great. So that's FinTech North. What about FinTech in the North? What's going on? Well, obviously, let's start in Liverpool. Where else would we start? Obviously, Liverpool has a proud sort of maritime history, long history of wealth coming in into the city. To this day, there's a real specialism in wealth tech and insurtech. Over in Manchester, we see a real strength in payments and e-commerce. In Leeds, which is where FinTech North started and where I'm from, there's a real strength in banking, lending, and regtech. And up in the northeast, we're seeing an emerging specialism in payments there as well. Some really well-scaled fintechs in the northeast, Atom Bank, Sage as well. Some of you guys will be familiar with them. There's around about 400 fintechs in the north of England, and the sector in the north is generating about 2 billion every year for the UK economy. That's out of about 2,500 fintechs nationally, generating about 11 billion overall. So the north is a sizable ecosystem. It compares to some of the other countries around the world. So we're here to shout about that and do that in a neutral way. Just wanted to expand a little bit on my usual presentation and talk you through some of our thinking this year. We've expanded the team. We've brought on board our new events coordinator, Rachel, and I think having a bigger team is allowing us a bit more space to think about some of those other areas that I mentioned. So in addition to running lots of great events this year, which is what we'll be trying to raise the bar, doing it bigger and better, we're also looking to do a bit more work across international trade. So we want to bring more trade missions to the north of England. we'll be working in partnership with the Department for Business and Trade, but we'll also be working with other organizations globally to make more things happen in the north and bring more fintechs from the north overseas to other markets as well. So you'll see a lot of activity on that front this year at FinTech North. Another thing to mention is skills. We're constantly hearing from people in the early stages of a fintech career, people who are looking to get into the sector, what skills do I need, where are the jobs, how do I get experience, and vice versa. We're also hearing from the employers that there's not a sufficient supply of people with the right skills to work in fintech. So we think that we are well placed to impact this issue positively. We can't solve it ourselves, but we do believe that we know the people who can. You know, we're at a university today, we know the education providers, we know the employers, we know all the training providers, like we can impact this agenda. So we've set up a steering committee, a Northern FinTech Skills Steering Committee. We're meeting on a sort of 6 weekly basis at the moment. We've brought a really good group of stakeholders together. But if anybody can help us with this, I'd love to have a chat with you. We do have a series of skills partnership packages as well for organizations to come on board and help us with this. So before I hand over, I just wanted to let my director, Julian Wells, join me up on stage because I know he wanted to say a few words. He's not on the agenda, but you know, he was here right at the start when we did our very first Liverpool event. So yeah, Julian, I'll hand over to you quickly if that's okay.
Cool, thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah, really quick. He's very polished now, isn't he? Really good. All I really wanted to say was just to kind of make the link back to our origins in Liverpool and our first event here. So in 2018, we were invited to host a FinTech session as part of the International Business Festival, which was a great big international festival which spanned the city. And we did that, and we probably had about, I don't know, maybe I would think maybe 70 people, something like that, through the day. We had the Metro Mayor, Steve Rotherham, come and talk. We had some international speakers like we do today. But it was the start of doing something, and I think Liverpool's always had a really strong interest in growing its fintech sector. And I guess in those early days, perhaps it was more a case of we need to bring fintech to Liverpool. And when I look at where we've got to now and reflect on some of the some of the things that have come out of work like the report we've done at Whitecap, which we'll talk about just before lunch today, I think Liverpool now has a fintech community. It's kind of, there's things happening here. There are people coming to Liverpool as well, but it really feels like the momentum's building. You know, this event today, the number of sign-ups, it's just fantastic. And I really hope that this is going to be a platform to do sort of bigger, better, and more regular fintech events across the city and the region. So I just want to say thanks for coming, and I'll hand it back to Joe, who will continue doing a stellar job of facilitating the morning. So thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you very much, Julian. So now, obviously, we're in this amazing University of Liverpool facility, and it wouldn't be right to not hear from the university today. We've got a few great speakers from the uni who are joining us a bit later on. But we've just got a quick welcome from Tim Jones now, so I'll just play that message for us.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Liverpool and welcome to the University of Liverpool. We are really pleased to be hosting the FinTech North Conference this year, and I know that the agenda will make for a thought-provoking day. Last year, we launched our new strategic framework, Liverpool 2031, with our sights set on being recognised as a global top 100 university. This is a city renowned internationally for being one of the best, perhaps most of all in music, in football, although difficult to admit as a Mancunian, and as a visitor destination. And we want it to also be known for having one of the very best global universities. Research is one of the core elements of our new strategy. It is at the heart of what we do, and we are building on very strong foundations. The government's most recent Research Excellence Framework results, published in 2022, judged 91% of our research to be in the top 2 categories, world-leading or internationally excellent. And pertinent to today's event, 97% of our computer science research is rated in those 2 categories, the highest of any computer science department in the UK. Indeed, we have a particular strength more broadly in digital research, helping local communities unlock potential solutions to social and health inequalities, and using AI to support decision-making in law, are just some of the ways we harness the transformative power of data and digital technologies to make a profound impact on people's lives. For example, colleagues here at the university have developed an advanced hybrid AI system to integrate the specialized legal expertise of lawyers with the capacity to learn from legal data through supervised learning. The integrated blockchain technology in this system securely maintains verifiable records of consent to access sensitive legal data obtained from multiple parties. Blockchain decentralization protects the AI algorithmic environment from malicious attacks, ensuring a secure and reliable platform for legal decision-making. The system is undergoing rigorous testing and evaluation and looks set to make a significant difference to the way cases are handled, with the ultimate potential to democratize access to legal services for a wider demographic. We want to turbocharge innovation for the benefit of the city region, in particular over the coming years. And this is a core part of our new strategic framework. Our digital innovation facility, the DIF, will be a key player in this work. A £13 million investment co-funded by the Liverpool City Region Combined Authorities Local Growth Fund. The DIF is a purpose-built for collaboration, includes a range of state-of-the-art lab spaces, providing new opportunities to assist our industry partners across a range of academic disciplines. Specialist labs in the DIF include a mixed reality lab containing the latest in virtual reality technology and equipment, an extreme environment lab that simulates real-world hazardous conditions for testing robotics and autonomous systems, and an immersive laboratory that focuses on developing sensory technologies in areas of smell and touch for the future. As a university, we also actively contribute to the growth and innovation of SMEs within the region through various funded programs. Initiatives include LCR4 Start, Help to Grow Management, LCR 4.0 Holistic, and funded internships offering support to SMEs seeking to grow and deliver innovative solutions to the market. In our education pillar, we are clearly committed to providing our students with the very best possible education, one based on a research-connected curriculum which equips them with the skills and knowledge that make them most attractive to employers. We are proud of our contribution to the City Region's talent pool and are working particularly hard to ensure our students graduate with the digital skills they need for future success in a rapidly changing world. To take just one example of our educational offer, our management school is amongst an elite group of business schools to hold the gold standard triple accreditation from the 3 main international agencies. Over the last 5 years, the school has reached and maintained top-level positions for its accounting and finance programs, consistently performing well in league tables and achieving a national student survey ranking of 1st in the Russell Group and 4th in the sector. The Accounting and Finance Group has around 50 faculty members, including an experienced team of professionally qualified accounting scholars, and is augmented by 25 PhD students. The group delivers specialist undergraduate programs, including a bachelor's degree in finance with data analytics. The group also delivers very popular postgraduate programs and significantly contributes to other programs in the school and the university. In September 2021, it launched its MSc Financial Technology program, which covers the latest FinTech innovations that impact on the financial sector and the skills needed to analyze and solve real-world financial problems. The program is led by Mr. Gavin Brown, who will be speaking on one of the panel sessions today, and we are delighted that some of the current MSc student cohort are in the audience too. We were sponsors of the Liverpool City Region FinTech Report 2023 and are delighted to continue our support by sponsoring the conference today. We look forward to seeing our local FinTech sector continue to flourish over the coming years, and I wish you all an enjoyable and productive day.
Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause? That was Tim Jones, Vice-Chancellor at the University of Liverpool. Before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to say a big thank you to another person who's not here today, FinTech North's Chairman, Chris Sear. He's normally at all of our conferences. He's not able to be with us today, but I just want to thank him for all of his work that he's done on behalf of FinTech North over the years. He's been a massive champion of regional FinTech innovation. So, Chris, if you're watching this back, I just wanted to give you a bit of a shout out there, mate. So I'm going to hand over now to Liverpool City Council. So, Liam, would you like to join me on stage and give a bit of a welcome? Much, sir. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And absolutely great to have the opportunity to welcome all of you to Liverpool and the wider Liverpool city region. Just before Christmas, Time Out magazine rated Liverpool as the 7th best city in the world to visit. So I'm biased, but I would argue you've chosen really well to come to Liverpool for this latest conference. And I do hope for those of you that are from outside the city and the time you spend with us, you also sample some of our exceptional hospitality. And we were also particularly proud that of those top 50 cities that were rated, Liverpool was one of only 2 non-capital cities, really showing kind of our prominence on the global stage. Look, it's a real sort of pleasure to be able to kind of welcome FinTech North back to Liverpool for this conference, because not only in terms of the great work that you're doing within the FinTech sector, but we're real strong believers of working on that pan-northern basis. We're always very, very conscious that when you take the north of England and it's 15 million people, we're actually geographically smaller than most US states. If we're able to work as one coordinated and cohesive economy, our global potential as a region is really, really significant. So it's absolutely great to work with organisations like FinTech North and others that really kind of focus on that huge northern opportunity for our economy. I also think it's fantastic just to focus on the FinTech sector. This is very much your bread and butter, what you do day in and day out. But we're always really struck about how exciting this burgeoning sector of the economy is in Liverpool, but right across the whole of the north. And we know that it's now the strongest subsector of the UK's technological element of the economy. And that, is real testament to the work that you do in having grown that sector over recent years. When you look at it on a northern kind of economic footprint, you're actually kind of adding an additional £218 million of GVA every year. You've got 42 fintechs that are based across the north, and actually 33 of those are startups or scale-ups, showing kind of that real sort of entrepreneurial and dynamic approach that all of you and all your different companies bring to the table. And that's employing, at the moment, 4,000 and more people in the sector. So it really shows that kind of strong potential of what you've already achieved, but what you'll continue to achieve. I think when we then sort of look at it slightly more through a kind of a Liverpool lens, and it was great to hear the different contributions about how genuinely this is a really sort of growing and strong and exciting sector for Liverpool and our wider city region. It's been great for us to have kind of organisations like Cash Plus Bank or Zemplar, as I know they're going through the kind of the rebranding, but also Swoop coming into the region, expanding into the region, and particularly sort of expanding their presence here and taking greater floor space and employing more people. And I think Cash Plus or Zemplar, I'm not sure officially what I should be calling it at this moment in time, is a great example because they chose to base in Liverpool in the Spine building, literally only about 500 yards from where we sat at this moment in time, at the heart of our knowledge quarter, as we like to call it, which is actually a government investment zone, so backed with all the kind of grants and tax breaks that allows us to kind of grow. But they particularly chose the Spine building, not just because it's got some of the highest wellness ratings that you kind of can find of any kind of new built office accommodation actually in the country in Europe, but crucially as well, they chose it because of the access to the graduate pool that Tim was talking about. We're very, very lucky to have a world-leading university here in Liverpool, as most northern cities are similarly. And particularly when you look at things like the FinTech Masters that kind of the University of Liverpool provide, and the point that Tim kind of rightfully pointed out, that 97% of computer science courses at the University of Liverpool are recognised as world-leading, and we're really proud that our university is recognised as having the strongest computer science department in the country, It's those reasons why we've been able to attract really good businesses like Cash Plus to the region. I think the other aspect, though, as well, when you look beyond those kind of specialisms for your sector, we honestly believe in Liverpool we've got some good competitive advantages. The actual cost of setting up a business here, renting space, employing people, or moving here and living here are actually really good value, certainly compared to the southeast, but actually even more competitive than other parts of the north as well. And equally, we believe we've got a really compelling quality of life offer. I've mentioned about our kind of really strong cultural and visitor sector, but when you then add into the fact that we've got a beautiful coastline and 3 national parks within 90 minutes drive of here, we honestly believe here is a great place to come and live, work, and actually invest. So looking forward to having any conversations with any of you individually that might look to come to Liverpool, but crucially, we're looking forward to working with all of you through FinTech North in what's a really exciting growth part of the economy, and we hope it won't be another 5 years before we welcome you back to the city for this conference. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks very much for that. Appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, very well said, and it certainly won't be. We'll be back next year, 100%. So our next segment, I'm going to ask Joanne, Chris, and Darren to join us up on stage, actually. Come and have a seat in the FinTech North living room, if that's okay. While the guys sort of take their seats and take their mics, I just want to say, huge thanks to MasterCard as strategic partners for the year, and also a massive thank you to Joe and to Chris. They've both been really supportive of FinTech North. You know, we're on a bit of a journey at the moment when it comes to accessibility in FinTech, which is something that's really important to us. We want to make sure that as many people can join our conferences and be aware of the opportunities that are in FinTech for them. So I just wanted to say thanks, guys, basically, and I'll leave it to you guys to introduce yourselves, and really looking forward to this next segment, so thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Joe, for welcoming us here and giving us an opportunity right at the beginning of the agenda, which I think speaks volumes to what you see as how important inclusion and accessibility is. Now, I'd like to start with just introducing ourselves, explain who we are, and I'm going to do something slightly different that probably most of you hadn't seen before. So I'm a white female with my hair tied back in the bun and wearing a blue dress covered in spots. I have had the privilege of leading a FinTech company, and now since exiting, I'm focused on finding ways to encourage our whole industry to be the best that it can be. Chris, would you like to have a very brief introduction as well?
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me? Yep. Hi everyone. My name is Chris Foster, and I am bald, white male, blue jumper, and blue trousers. I'll tell you a little bit about myself a little bit later.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And echoing Joe's points earlier, Joe Roche
Two Joes.
and FinTech North. I qualified that. Thank you so much for this opportunity as well. It really is phenomenal. So my name's Darren. For those who don't know me, and I'm sure there's a lot in the room that don't, albeit I'm trying to get out of London more and more and really drive and get behind and partner the regional FinTech communities. My name's Darren Powell. I lead business development for MasterCard's FinTech sector, which is very much focused on cards and card issuance, but ultimately lean on me if you know where there's opportunities to navigate within MasterCard and to make better connections. As a image descriptor, I'm somewhere between Joe and Chris in the hair stakes, but probably closer to Chris. I'm 6'8". Today I'm wearing a very boring and bland outfit, to be fair, but I've got a bright green t-shirt on, which makes me slightly FinTech with a jacket. I like to think it does anyway. But it's a real privilege to be part of this and to be part of this movement that we're going to talk about a little bit more here today.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Joe, I will just ask you to give me a 1-minute warning, because the three of us can talk about this all day. And I know there's plenty of other exciting things on the agenda. So what we're going to focus on a little bit is just to draw attention to the role of accessibility and inclusion, and particularly the role of allies. And that can apply across a range of underrepresented groups. fully aware that, there's extraordinary privilege in working in FinTech in London, and we need to be very aware of being able to make our networks, our events, our content as accessible as we can to the whole country, and that's why, the three of us are very keen to, lean in and travel and bring some of the messages up here. Now, payments in particular, but, FinTech across the board, it is for everyone, and it's super important to be thinking about not just thinking about, but really involving the whole community in the design of our products and services and making sure that we are fully inclusive. And the disability community in particular is one that I feel I've held the torch on diversity and inclusion for a long time, but I feel that disability inclusion has really been overlooked, and yet, the accessibility considerations, are absolutely paramount. Otherwise, we are completely excluding certain segments of society, and whereas in fact it is the largest minority, representing 23% of the population. Now, to kick things off, Chris, what's so important is there can be real prejudices and biases, can't there? This is your lived experience every day, so maybe tell us a little bit about your experience and actually what you do for real.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you for having me. I am a proud disabled person, and also I was brought up with additional needs. I have Down syndrome, and I'm also autistic, and I say that proudly. But we are very underrepresented. My life, sadly, has gone through many trials and tribulations. But for myself, every day I see biases and challenges that keep putting not just myself, but the disabled community down. And I challenge that narrative and perspective on about how people with disabilities and learning disabilities are seen. 2 years ago, I set up a project called Open Book. Open Book is a media outlet for people with disabilities to share their voice. And by doing so, not really fathoming what I was going to do, 160 interviews down. The last 2 years, I've just worked with brands like JD Sport, Foot Patrol, and last year for Disability History Month, I ended up working with Nike. And I think that's really important to say because, in all honesty, it shows you the capability when you have true allyship standing by our side. And within that, we can then see that all things are possible, no matter what your disability is. So I really believe it's a real opportunity to kind of look at people with disabilities in a different light and not necessarily focus on the things that they can't do, but look at the things that they can. And when you do that, your culture within your industry will raise to a whole new level. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Chris. Very, very powerful. And talking of allies, there's no stronger ally in our industry than this man here, Darren Powell. You've played a role as an ally in across many dimensions. Tell us a little bit about it and why you lean in so much.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And Chris and Joe, it's such a difficult act to follow in terms of what I say. Because when you speak, people listen. In this room now, you can hear a pin drop when you're talking about your lived experiences, something that I can't. But from an ally perspective, for me, this is very much around intersectionality. Of course, today we're talking specifically around access, disability awareness and inclusion. But for me, allyship transcends all of those potential verticals, whether it's, from an LGBTQIA plus perspective, whether it's from a gender parity, something that I'm looking forward to hearing you speak about later, Joe. But for me, allyship is actually, I'm no subject matter expert, but I'm absolutely committed to being part of change and being an agent of change. However big or small that part may be, it's about trying to have a level of influence, leveraging a network that I have, and also the company that I represent and work for. And I'm delighted to, a brand like MasterCard, one of the most recognized brands globally, can only complement and benefit efforts that we're trying to take and make. And for me, in an ally capacity, it's about bringing like-minded people together who are keen to go on a journey. We don't have all the answers. There's a lot of people within industry, FinTech and beyond, that are doing some wonderful things in this space. You think of, just to call out a few, the likes of David Agar and Penny at Bankability. We've got Jane, who's very focused at Sibstar, and Marty on the dementia lens. But the fact remains, somehow we've got to bring all of these entities together, lean in collectively. And it's a little aligned to the point Joe Roche, I keep needing to qualify that, mentioned earlier in terms of community. This is what this community is about. FinTech North, it's about bringing together a collective that are keen and committed to drive a level of action and improved output.
It's just as well said, Darren. And you've got a real platform, and we can see you're using your platform online, LinkedIn, to be able to sort of showcase and shine a light on things. But being an ally is both things, because we also, have you in the room, leaning in and learning in ways that isn't drawing profiles of yourself, but that really sort of helps build the learning, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for those of you that know me, I love a bit of LinkedIn. I think it's amazing what you can get from social media and social selling generally. But it's not about that. You use your platforms to the advantage that you're trying to achieve. And hashtag Project Nemo, and I'm sure we'll dive into that in a little bit, in a little more detail in a second. But ultimately, these platforms are there for us to use to maximize the leverage, and we can create a following very quickly. Not just a following, but we can help educate ourselves as much as a wider network. And just in recent examples, we've had customer forums, we've had a recent Pay 360 event. We're here today at FinTech North. I am sure when Joe, when Chris, hopefully myself, start talking a little bit more about some of the work that Joe is driving, and that Chris and the disabled and the abled community are looking to achieve with Project Nemo, it is phenomenal, and there'll be no shortage of conversations.
Thank you. And I talk about the role of allies versus pioneers, with the pioneers being sort of the first of their community in any organization. It cannot rest on that pioneer to have the added burden of responsibility of getting the doors open and make other people understand, their community and their potential additional needs. The role of allyship is all important. As is the role of representation, Chris. And, being a pioneer that you are, you don't want to be a token, do you?
Absolutely not. Representation is so paramount. Growing up, I saw nobody that looked like me. So there was no focus on what my possibilities could be, because even to this day, we look in the media channels, we look at your local supermarket, you look at your favorite shop, right? You don't see people that look like me. So how can we get that aspiration? And I always use this story. So when we started Open Book, and initially we just started as an Instagram page, there was a mother who introduced her young son to the platform and to see me. That young boy, Jacob, and Jacob, I speak to Jacob, every other day, and Jacob said to his mother, a few months back, "Mummy, he looks like me." And with that, he copies me and mimics me in the way I dress, the way I present myself. But it gives hope to the next generation ahead of us. And I think that's so important, because in today's day and age, with all what's going on in the world right now, to see that is so imperative and so important. We are the most underrepresented community, but yet we have so much we can offer. So I'm certainly not a token, Joe, because I know that with what we're doing right now, we're going to literally transform and change industry as a whole.
And just to add to that story, for Jacob to be saying he looks like me, Jacob's a little black boy, isn't he?
Jacob's a little black boy. But he's more than that. I've taken him on board as hopefully I'll be a positive role model for him. And he's just an exceptional, gifted, talented individual that honestly gives me the greatest joy when he comes into the room, full of love and light.
And the key here is that we can make change much more readily and be aware of what we're designing and building when we've got inclusion around the table making those inclusive decisions. Darren, what have you seen, or what do you think we can do in terms of thinking about how all of our products and services can become more accessible and inclusive?
I think, again, this is where collectively and that collective action needs to come to the fore. You know, I think it's really quite a simple statement to make that, you know, accessible by design is relatively easy to say. I think people need to be talking about it more consistently. I think there's a level of acknowledgement of who, in terms of whether it's architects, product designers, value, you know, those that are leading value propositions, how accessibility and inclusion in its broadest sense, how things are ultimately pertinent and relevant for all, rather than actually potentially just looking at certain subsects of community. So I think there's a huge part that, again, we all play in, you know, within the businesses that we work within. And you don't necessarily even need to be a product owner or a product designer to have influence, because everyone can see opportunity. And when you start breaking this down to some of the minutiae, you know, it may be colorblind, or it might be size of font, or it might be how things scale, or in terms of wider products, how it's accessible to those who may struggle with technology, as an example. So I think it's hugely multifaceted, but I think, again, we have a community that have some real expertise. It may be in some specific sectors of that, but it's how can we bring that together? How can we better align? And how can we better discuss and inform?
And that's exactly what we're going to do, isn't it? So we are building we said earlier, a movement, a campaign that we're launching in a few weeks. It's going to be called Project Nemo, but for now, if you follow any of the three of us, we'll be sharing more information in due course. It is an awareness raising and educational set of sessions, initiatives, and then content to be able to connect the FinTech community with the expertise and service providers and provide an easy how-to, step-by-step guide in terms of thinking about how to make our products and services and our organizations more accessible and inclusive. So I'm going to leave the final words to Darren and Chris. What is something that we can think about all doing today? First of all, Darren.
I think for me there's two things. There's a part we can all play, and we shouldn't underestimate that. You know, we absolutely, all of us, have a voice, have a view, have opinions, and have value that we can afford and lean into driving improvements in terms of accessibility and disability inclusion. I think the other thing that we can start to do much quicker is actually remove those first three letters, the D, the I, and the S, and focus on the abled or the ability word.
And finally, Chris, the mic is yours.
Disability does not discriminate. It affects every race, religion, sex, and age. But yet it's a conversation that simply is not spoken about enough. I say that to say this, is that when we talk about disability, especially within this industry, how many disabled people are actually in the room? How many disabled people are actually sitting at the table? I know firsthand over the last 2 years since I've worked within FinTech, it only seems that I'm the only one. And that needs to change. So it's passing the mic now back over to you, because you are that change. And you're the ones now that can actually go back into those boardrooms and turn around and say, why aren't we seeing this? And then utilize your voice. So now it's the opportunity, pass the mic back to you. And hopefully we then can see a more inclusive world. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you very much.
Truly inspiring stuff. Yeah, I couldn't thank you all enough, and privileged really to have you with us today, and delighted that you could make that slot right at the start of our event. Yeah, just couldn't say it better than Chris has said it. Really, he said it all there. So thank you so much, guys, for supporting our conference. So obviously, with our conferences, we try and give you an idea of what's going on in the UK and the wider sort of UK landscape. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Peter is joining us from Innovate Finance. So Peter, if you want to join me up on stage, you've got a handheld mic here, and this clicker, if you just press right, will take you through your slides. I'll just get you your microphone, sir.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, and you can see your slides on screen there. So.
Perfect.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, everyone, and good morning. I hope you can all hear me well. My name is Peter Canane. I am the Director of National and International Initiatives at Innovate Finance. I'll be describing Innovate Finance in a moment, but I just wanted to say it's an absolute pleasure to be back here in Liverpool. Yes, I think I was here 5 years ago. That was one of my earliest outings with Innovate Finance. So it's been a great journey with FinTech North to sort of come along to these conferences and say a few words about what's happening in the broader UK ecosystem. So delighted to be back, and thanks again to University of Liverpool for hosting, to FinTech North, of course, to Joe, to Julian, to Chris, if you're watching, and to everyone on the team. It's brilliant to be back. So Innovate Finance, for those of you that don't know us, or know of us, oh, there I am, gosh, it's huge, the screen, isn't it? For those of you that don't know us, we are the UK's preeminent trade organisation for the global FinTech sector. And one of the reasons why I was wearing my glasses as I came up on stage was to hide my very tired eyes, because as you can see on the screen behind me, we at the team are now preparing very deeply for the largest FinTech event in the UK. So I hope the team don't mind me the plug. It's IFGS in 2 weeks' time. This is the biggest UK FinTech event hosted at the Guildhall in the City of London, and it's the start of UK FinTech Week, which is a huge opportunity for us, but also for everyone in this room to get engaged and get involved and talking about the global FinTech ecosystem, all the opportunities across all the different segments of FinTech, with almost 2,000 people there, 150, 200 speakers from around the globe, and for the very first time this year, we've got a stand with FinTech North, who are sponsoring us as well. So really pleased to be part of that. The reason why I do have these rings here is that the team right now is really, really up against the deadlines for all of that, but it is looking like a fantastic event this year. So do sign up if you can make it. You would be very welcome indeed. But Innovate Finance, so who are we? We sit very much at the heart of a UK and a global FinTech ecosystem. We work with a number of different organizations, companies, key stakeholders. We are a membership organization. We are wholly independent of government, so we're non-partial. And I'll talk more in a moment about our policy and regulatory work, which is hugely impactful. We work with a number of national and international FinTech hubs. We work with a number of financial and professional institutions. And most importantly, we work with our 300 or so members to promote them, to ensure that they're getting the best opportunities for their businesses out of this FinTech ecosystem, and to ensure that they are best represented by the UK. We have 5 broad missions, which I'll come to in a moment, but just to say something about where we sit within the UK. We are proud secretariat for something called the FinTech National Network. Not only do we work with FinTech North, we also work with a number of these organizations that you can see up there from right around the UK as well. And what we want to do is to engage with businesses right around the UK to ensure that their voice is also being reflected back and heard in our work too. as I was saying, we have 5 broad missions around FinTech. One is our policy and regulatory work. Very much the focus of our attention domestically. Because we are non-partisan and impartial, we're able to sit down regularly with the UK government and with regulators to ensure that our ecosystem remains competitive and we can maintain that comparative advantage that we have over a number of other international hubs. At the moment, 3 things I'll pull out that we're looking at. Obviously, with where we are in the electoral cycle here in the UK, we're doing a big piece of work around the FinTech Manifesto, looking at what we can do to work with the next government, whoever that may be, in terms of continuing to promote the sector. We're doing a big piece of work around fraud, ensuring that the fraud is rightly recognised and tackled, and actually creates opportunities again for those fintechs that can have the solutions to help combat fraud, are getting the attention that they deserve. And we're also working very closely with organisations such as the Open Banking Delivery Institute and Open Banking Excellence to ensure that open banking and open finance and the next stage of open banking is also getting the attention it needs and creating those opportunities for business in that space as well. And what we're hoping to achieve through all of that is to ensure that the UK remains in that top placing in terms of its global leadership in the FinTech sector. We also have a huge piece around the promotion of skills and talent. Very excited to hear what's happening here in FinTech North around the skills piece. We're also working with a number of institutions and academics and the University of Manchester in particular around something called the UK FinTech Academic Network, which was established this time last year to again help with research and the development of the right sorts of courses, but also the right sorts of initiatives to support the ongoing thinking and thought leadership around the sector. One of our big plays, though, is something called FinTech as a Force for Good. This is a very significant mission for us. Our second biggest event of the year, also known as the FinTech as a Force for Good Forum, which typically happens in the autumn, is a meeting place for a number of our initiatives in this space, which include ESG, which include diversity, and includes financial inclusion and inclusivity as well. For a long time, we have promoted the role of women in FinTech. Women in FinTech Power List is now in its 10th year, and we celebrated all our fabulous and fantastic women in the space this time last week. Last year, we launched our Pride in FinTech Power List for the very first time, again, celebrating all those in the LGBTQ plus community. And it's fascinating to hear the previous panel to Joe and to Chris and Darren around what could come next. We are thinking about expanding our own diversity programs, and I have to say, disabled and neurodiversity are very high up that list internally. So without giving anything away now, that could be where we go in the future. Net Zero 2, we had a huge net zero policy report that came out this time last year as well, helping, again, our financial institutions meet their net zero targets using the technology within the sector. Our fourth area is the area I am leading. It's our international work. We launched for the very first time 18 months ago a regular program of work overseas in New York City. We now have permanent representation. We have someone out in New York representing Innovate Finance there, and we are now making quarterly visits to the city to engage with the US FinTech sector. We've seen huge interest in the UK from US companies, principally coming through New York to the UK and then to Europe, which is amazing for all of us. It's amazing for the growth of the ecosystem here in the UK. And I'm very proud to have led that work for the last 18 months and to support those UK companies equally that are going out to the United States as well. And whilst it's very much based in New York at the moment, we are looking at where we can expand to. We did also host an event last year in California, in Silicon Valley. So we'll be looking again at where we can go to next within North America. And it's very much our hope to be at, well, we will be at a number of events that are forthcoming this year. These are the listed events that we were at last year, so that includes the Singapore FinTech Festival, where we want to be increasing our engagement in the Asia-Pacific region, and also Money 2020, of course, which is coming up shortly as well. So a lot of work happening to promote the sector internationally, working with the likes of FinTech North and the National Network, but also working with another of key stakeholders across government, in particular the Department for Business and Trade. On the final piece up there, investment, I'll come to in a moment, because actually there's a few things I want to dig into there in terms of the investment landscape, which I think you'll find interesting and hopefully positive. So I'll skip through to that, but just before I do, I mentioned a moment ago the policy areas that we're covering, and there's some more detail up there as well. I won't go into all of that, but again, it gives you a sense it's not just those three things I mentioned earlier. There's a whole raft of activity that we're engaging in domestically that we want to progress on behalf of all the businesses in this room. So the fifth area we've been working through is our investment piece, and we very proudly launch every year an investment report at the start of each year, which reflects back on the previous year's investment into FinTech. And I'm afraid to say that last year, investment across the global ecosystem was down 43%. 2023, as many of you know, economically was a tough year. There's various reasons for that, of course. Economically, the cost of living, global geopolitical crises. So we did see a movement down. However, the UK remains second only to the United States in terms of the size of our FinTech ecosystem and the investment coming into that, with £5.1 billion coming into the sector last year. It leaves us in second place, way ahead of third place, and way ahead of the next 28 European hubs for FinTech as well. So the UK very much holding its own in terms of the investment that's coming here, which is good news. The other positive news that I can offer in terms of the investment piece is, despite that decline to something around 2019 levels, actually this graph, though it might look quite scary, does indicate we still had 409 deals done in the UK FinTech ecosystem last year. And actually looking ahead to 2024 and the second half of this year in particular, we're seeing renewed interest, particularly in wealth tech and wealth asset management. So great, again, from a Liverpool perspective in terms of the industries that are traditionally here. InsurTech as well is seeing renewed interest and increase in investment. And we're also seeing interest in increase in investment in blockchain, in payments, and in female-led businesses. One of the nicer stories that came out of the report last year was an increase into investment into female-led businesses, £1.1 billion, in fact, from that £5.1 billion. So that's a remarkable turnaround on previous years, and hopefully means that our investors are finally recognizing that diversity in business does lead to success. So on that positive note, I'll pause there. I'll be around for the whole day, so if anyone wants to come and have a conversation, wants to know more about IFGS, forgive me the second plug, then please do. And I look forward to meeting you all over the course of today. Thanks again, everyone, and pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks so much. Awesome. Thank you, Peter. Some really positive news right at the end there. So it's great to get Innovate Finance's perspective on all of this stuff. Another key organisation that was actually recently formed in the UK is CFIT, the Centre for Finance, Innovation and Technology. So we're delighted to be joined by Senya. If you can join me on stage, Senya, that would be awesome. Please tell us all about CFIT and the coalitions and all the work that you're doing. So if you just go right there to move your slides on, and you should be able to see on the screen there. So yeah, there you go. Awesome. And your microphone, you'll be needing that. Thank you.
Right, can you hear me okay? Yes, nice to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm Xenia Grant. I represent Center for Finance, Innovation and Technology, just CFIT. And I'm a director for ecosystem and partnerships. The center is a UK-wide organization. We're virtual. We don't have a headquarters anywhere in particular. We have a number of colleagues based in London and the South, but also elsewhere in UK. As you can tell by my accent, I'm from Scotland. And beyond that, obviously, not necessarily born there. Moved to Scotland about 17 years ago now. So thought I will mention that, so you can focus on what I'm telling you rather than where this accent is from. So that's enough about me. I'm here to tell you a bit more about the center. If you haven't heard about us before, just brief introduction for the context. Back in 2021, there was something called UK Califa Review of FinTech. It was commissioned by the UK government. And one of the recommendations was to establish the center, really to drive the innovation in the sector nationally and internationally. The center was then set up last year, February, so yeah, we are just 1 year old. We are funded by UK Treasury and City of London Corporation for about another year. And after that, open waters, so we'll see. Yeah, our mission is really to drive innovation and block barriers, work with the sector. And we have adopted this model for collaboration around working on coalitions. Again, if you haven't heard about the coalition model, something that, for example, Green Finance Institute has been using as well. A coalition is a time-bound working group that brings experts from industry, regulators, policymakers, academia, to really get them to work together to tackle a particular challenge, and kind of using a research-led approach. So our first coalition that started around summer last year, and we completed it now at the end of February, focused on open finance. Why open finance? If you're not that familiar with the concept, it is really a next phase in innovation and kind of evolution of financial services innovation, following really from the success of open banking and the idea of really securely sharing customer data with trusted third parties. But it encompasses much wider, broader range of financial information. So beyond the current account, it will combine savings, pensions, insurance, mortgages, and other key aspects of personal finance. It also really revolutionizes how individuals manage their finances and how they will interact with financial products and services. They will be able to have a comprehensive view of their finances, and kind of the third parties are also then able to create more innovative solutions, giving again customers a better transparency sorry, and control over their finances. And it's also a global opportunity for the UK, and Peter talked about a variety of opportunities internationally. UK was and is seen as a leader in open banking, and we have now the opportunity to lead internationally on open finance, developing standards and so on, growing the sector here in the UK and elsewhere. So briefly introducing our coalition in terms of how did we go about it? Obviously, open finance is huge, right? It involves so many aspects. There are so many use cases. So we had to kind of really think about how we narrow it down and what we focus during a short period of time. We focused on really identifying the key challenges, looking at data sets, prioritizing, I think it was over 30 data sets that we believed could help unlock potential of open finance. And we developed prototypes to showcase potential of using those data sets and potential of open finance. And what's important for us is that the outputs of our coalitions are freely available. Therefore, you can find a lot of information on the results of the coalition online, much more than I will have time to tell you today. So do please check our website for the report itself, as well as a lot of technical information from the coalition, both on the prototypes and other areas. So do have a look. So yeah, there are a number of challenges to tackle before open finance becomes a reality. For example, the data points exist in silos at the moment. There is no cohesive data sharing framework. And there is limited trust in data sharing. So we had to focus first really on creating a demonstration infrastructure to aggregate data and to prototype authentication and consent flow, and consent hub before we could focus on actual use cases. Our approach streamlines different data requests into a single user-friendly interface and puts user consent and control at the heart of the solution. I won't be talking much about this further today. Again, we have a lot of information online. What I wanted to focus during the presentation is really our use cases, our prototypes. I think they really illustrate the power of open finance and the potential and the impact they could have on all of us. So we focus on 2 use cases, one for consumers and one for SMEs. For the consumer use case, we partnered with Citizens Advice to improve their debt advisory capacity and proving the case that open finance can help transform the lives of some of the most financially vulnerable in the UK. On the SME side, we partnered with HSBC to really show potential impact additional data sets could have on access to finance for SMEs. So I'll tell you more about those 2 use cases. First, the Citizen Advice. Before I tell you about what we did, I think it's important to explain why we chose this use case, because as I said, open finance has got so many potential use cases. But I think the context is quite powerful here. You'll see, obviously, from research published in the media and elsewhere, but actually when we actually looked into much further, some of the statistics are really quite staggering. So the cost of living crisis is one of the reasons for some of the issues that Citizens Advice in particular is facing. The rise in the cost of living has pushed the UK standards of living to its lowest point since 1956. The increasing cost of living is having a dramatic toll on people's ability to buy necessities. So 1 in 2 of Citizens Advice clients are saying that they can't actually afford the essentials. And obviously that all impacts people's mental health, and 20% of people are reporting worsening depression. And obviously, we want to help the debt advisory services like Citizens Advice, and they are facing a number of challenges. One is actually the lack of access to data. Obviously, they're also finding issues with actually getting funding. But to help them with the data challenge, we looked how we can address some of the challenges they are facing. 75% of people who are trying to reach Citizens Advice can't actually get through. Their call will never be answered. There are just not enough people available on the other side to pick up the phone. And once they actually, the lucky ones who get through, are able to speak to an advisor, they have to complete something called standard financial statement, which requires 600 data points to be provided. So what we worked on, what we worked on together is really developing a streamlined solution. Don't know if that's, yep. There you go. So yes, on this big screen, you can see it very well. I was worried that it would be a little bit lost, but definitely not. So you can see it on the left-hand side from the client's perspective, their journey. Clear, transparent, easy to understand language, explaining why their data is required for the faster debt advice, and setting out what data sets are needed. On the right-hand side, you can see how the debt advisors are now empowered with a new dashboard. And that includes various breakdowns on financial overview, fixed outgoings, and flexible outgoings as well. So yeah, with this prototype, we were able to show what massive difference that would have made that could make to the citizens' advice. Basically, with this tool in hand, the advisors could pre-populate 90% of the data points on the standard financial statements, making it much quicker for everyone involved, the client and the advisor. And then the advisors can swiftly analyze the individual circumstances and tailor the debt advice to the client. For example, providing personalized debt management tools, tips, and crafting repayment schedules, and so on. That also means that the advisor's capacity is now increased by 45%. Because they don't have to try to deal with all that data points to be collected and entered, they actually have time to pick up the phone and help more people. And Citizens Advice estimated that an additional 150 additional clients could be helped annually when they have this tool. Obviously, over 10 years, that's 1 million plus additional people that are getting help and advice with their personal financial circumstances. And there's also a gain of £1,000 a year in income for those involved, as removing some of the pressures that they are facing. So hopefully this illustrates a little bit for you the opportunity that open finance brings for revolutionizing financial well-being. And now the SME case study. So here we looked into additional data sets that can really streamline and improve the process for SMEs and the lenders. But again, a bit of a context, why that case study, why it's important. I don't know if you're aware, SMEs constitute 50% of private sector turnover, contributing 3 trillion annually to the economy. But they actually face £22 billion funding gap, which actually creates a situation where 900,000 small businesses are at risk. That's 16% of all SMEs in the UK. So we worked on this use case to really help the SMEs then reach their potential and remove barriers, unnecessary friction in the credit application process, and showing how open finance can really enable better lending to businesses. And the economic impact of this could be really quite staggering. So if every business could just employ one more person, we have 5.5 million SMEs, that could cover the current unemployment rate 4 times over. I'm sure that will create some other issues, but potentially more of a positive problem to have. Again, here what we focus is that journey for the applicant and for the lender. And the process for collecting and collating data in the application process creates a lot of friction for the SMEs. And that means that actually, in reality, a lot of them drop out from the process and they never complete the application in the first instance. They also find that the most valuable data sets about the business may not be easily accessible, or they may be underutilized by the lenders. And they also find that their credit worthiness as a business are determined by a limited view of director credit profiles. So the coalition built a prototype SME lending dashboard to assess how additional data sources can improve access to credit. In this pilot, HSBC selected a representative sample of SME lending applications from a wide range of sectors. And the coalition developed a prototype solution for SME lending, which auto-populates companies' lending applications with open banking, companies' house, and HMRC VAT data sets in order to provide comprehensive financial picture of the SME. And you can see those dashboards again from the lender's perspective. The user journey is also streamlined, and similarly as you've seen with the citizens' advice. Again, you can see more detail online, so I encourage you to check it out if that's of interest. And again, the potential impact of this use case is really fascinating. The increased access to the data sets, such as open banking, HMRC, and companies' house, really give better outcomes for the SMEs, which means that the lenders can lend to more organizations and more SMEs can have access to funding. So in this particular case, over a quarter of businesses from a representative sample of SMEs in NHS portfolio were able to now receive a credit offer without a human referral. We also saw that in that study that over half of the SME sample that dropped out of the application process could have received a credit decision if they completed the journey with the enhanced data sets. And also there were positive impacts of kind of the data aggregation and visualization, which helps reduce the time for the lender to gather information and assess the applications. So obviously the key findings from our coalition as a whole were heavily influenced by the work on those two case studies. As I mentioned already, case of SME lending and supporting vulnerable consumers. But also we found that there's a power of working together. We had fantastic partners from across the sector, so 67 organizations, some of them in the room today. And working together, really bringing the best minds from the sector, we were able to prove that we can put the ideas together, turn them into viable proofs of concept that, if implemented, could make a positive difference to the lives of consumers and business people. And there's also, we found research that proves that there is a positive impact to the economy from open finance and personal data mobility that could boost the GDP in the UK by £30.5 billion. But there's also a need to make open finance simple. We proved with our consent notifications prototypes that they could be put in one place, streamlined. It's not solving the issue yet, but there is a work required in this area to make it simple and accessible for the consumers and customers. And last but not least, our recommendation of what to do next. So obviously, again, related in the first instance to our proof of concepts, we are keen to work on them further. The organizations involved in that work are very keen to take it further and see it developed into full prototypes. With the SME lending, we really need to test it further, work with more organizations where we use real data and test it in real life environments. With the consumer use case, citizens advice are really actively investigating how they can turn this proof of concept into a working solution and that they will be implemented. So we are advising them, working with them to see how we can support that further. But actually, beyond those proof of concepts, what was actually also interesting, the kind of wider aspects of open finance. And one of the messages that we heard from industry really strongly were around the need for a commercial model, a viable commercial model for open finance. We had a variety of views from the involved partners, but it's fair to say that there's an agreement that that's something that needs to be worked on further. So that's one of the recommendations that we are exploring into taking further and see how we can bring partners together on working particularly on this challenge to bring ideas together and take it to fruition. We also think that there is a need for an accountable body for open finance. We believe one of the reasons why open banking was successful is that the fact that we had an accountable body that was driving open banking. And I think we similarly need a body that will really drive open finance going forward and steward its implementation. I think there is still work around consent unification. There are actually other government departments that are looking into this, and so what we are hoping to do is perhaps bringing a working group together to advise provide advice to some of the other groups on how this should particularly work within the context of open finance. And also, one of our recommendations is around establishing a task force to prioritize open finance APIs. I will finish with this. Hopefully, if you have any questions or if any of this is of interest, I will be very keen to speak to you later during the breaks. But yeah, just wanted at the very end acknowledge our partners who worked in the coalition, a fantastic set of organizations that put their time together, put time and colleagues to work on this challenge. So yeah, very hugely grateful to everyone involved. So yeah, I think that's us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Amazing, Senja. Thank you very much for being with us here today. I was at the showcase session that you guys hosted in London, and it's absolutely staggering to see the progress that's been made, and all of that as a result of a recommendation from the Khalifa Review. So really look forward to seeing what impact you have and supporting you in that journey as well. So our next speaker, Gela, please come on stage and talk to us a little bit about F-Data and why the future of FinTech isn't finance. Over to you, and that's to go through your slides if you press right.
We'll see if this actually works because it's always user error. And I'm going to slide over here so I can remind myself exactly the order of slides. My name is Gela, and this is not an AA meeting, but that's how I usually start. I am obsessed with data sharing. In fact, that's my entire focus. And I focus primarily, as does F-Data, on policy and advocacy around data sharing and the proper way to data share. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and what it looks like. But I wanted to start off today with the absolute conviction that the future of FinTech is absolutely not finance. And it's not a controversial thing to say, despite the fact that it sounds a bit paradoxical. Why isn't it about finance? Because there is so much more data out there that we have the ability to access and the ability to innovate upon, that it really is about widening up and opening up the ability to share data in a secure, safe, consented, and permissioned fashion. So while you may be focusing on building financial technology products and services, you may actually be focused on products for a financial asset or an instrument. But really, where the value comes in is having a full view of the impact of that particular choice that the customer has in selecting the product, but also how it bears impact on their actual daily lives and their financial health and wealth. So let's talk about this. Data is really about intersectionality now. It's not about sector-specific or vertical-specific data sets. We need to be looking at how things actually impact one another as they're exchanging intelligence across an entire network. Data is fundamentally intersectional, and it's supposed to be smart. We haven't yet leveraged the smart intelligence aspect. We're working on this. And what that really means is smart data is about taking multiple data sets and looking at causation, correlation, and impact and output. And we're focused now in the UK on enabling a smart data scheme. For those of you who are not particularly attentive to the open banking space, which is what we're going to be talking about a bit, there is something called the Data Protection and Digital Innovation Bill that is sitting currently now in the House of Lords. That particular piece of legislation has 17 lines that fundamentally enable something called the data sharing economy. It allows different sectors to set up governance structures around how we share data. And it also encourages cross-sectional and sector data sharing so that you can be looking at your comms data, your retail data, your transportation data, your health data, your financial data, all in some sort of crazy mixture. That particular bill is supposed to ascend this summer, and that will enable each of these different departments, retail, transportation, comms, energy, and finance, to set up secondary legislation that formalizes this. It's actually an infrastructure approach to data sharing. And again, finance is just one vertical. However, finance is the first place where we started to look at the formal sharing of data in a regulatory context with a regulatory and legislative framework and a legal framework that looks at all sorts of things from the liability to the technical aspect to the end consumer aspect, the actual impact on those that consume the products and services that we craft. Thing is, you've been able to share your financial data for years. What you haven't been able to do is share it digitally in a single format, in a safe and secure way, and with a bunch of controls around the permissions of who gets to see it and for what purpose it actually is to be used. So for those of you who've done mortgages or loan applications, back in the day, we used to actually download, we didn't even download it, we printed it off, took it manually to our bank manager's office and sat down with them for a minute while they sort of flicked through things and said, sure, we'll review it. And then we waited weeks to get an approval, let alone months maybe to actually get the funds released, depending on the complexity of the loan or the complexity of the product. We've been data sharing for years. Then it was a CSV download file that you could then email over. But of course, email's not safe and secure, nor is a CSV file. And anybody could actually get their grubby little hands on it. Open banking was the very first time that we had a formal infrastructure and technological framework around how data could be shared. It was enacted under the Payment Services Directive 2 in Europe, and it was formally adopted in the UK in 2017 by the Competition and Market Authority. What this did, it said, we're prescribing a particular approach. Technologically, we're going to say it's agnostic, but right now we recommend APIs, or the Application Program Interface. It's a safe and secure way. We can actually track and audit the data as it moves through the system. And we're going to put a formal consent, authorization, and authentication process around this, which means I have to verify that you are the person to share that data. It's your data to share. Secondly, I have to authenticate that it's actually you. And then I have to actually look at the authorization. Do you permit this data to be shared? So data is now mobile and portable. At least your financial data, according to your payments and transactional account history, is. And it's been set up. Starting in 2018, it started to formally roll out. It's now very live. We've got about 11 to 12 million active users monthly sharing their data. And we anticipate that under an open finance framework, which cross fingers, we'll actually see come to fruition by the end of 2025, early 2026. It's a long, hard slog, people. Like, seriously, it's a long, hard slog to deliver this. But it's effective. And then we're looking beyond that. And this DPDI bill has actually already convened a smart data council that has Ofgem, Ofcom, and the FCA, all in Treasury, all feeding into this. And what we're looking at now is how to move beyond open banking to ensure that your savings, your credit, your investment, pensions, and insurance data can all move through the same safe, secure, consented permission system that your transactional data does. But the thing is we've been doing this for years. We've been sharing that information. We just haven't been sharing it in a way that preserves security and that actually is based on permission. So, smart data in the UK. Like I mentioned, it's coming. And the interesting thing is we're already starting to explore what this looks like in other sectors. I'm also involved in not just the finance aspect of things. I'm involved in the smart energy projects. I'm currently sitting on a working group for consent management for smart energy and looking at how this actually will start to, A, be built, but B, also be interoperable with what we've set up for finance. The interesting thing about this is that other sectors are not necessarily as digital ready as finance is. We've had a lot of digital innovation and digitization transformation efforts in the industry over the last 20 years. Now we're starting to see that come in other sectors. So we may have to wait a little bit for them to catch up, but they're not far behind, and they're certainly not letting the grass grow under their feet. They're taking a lot of lessons from open banking. They're seeing how this actually works in practice, and they're looking at the legislative, legal, and liability frameworks and looking to take the best of the lessons that have come off the back of that from open banking to apply them to these other sectors. But they're also looking at how they can leapfrog over a lot of the hard lessons that we've had in building the open banking ecosystem. So there are a few things that are quite interesting when we start to look at smart data. Like I said, it's all about intersectionality. And it really is about how do you start to blend different data sets in order to improve the outcome for end consumers. And there are a few listed here. One of the most interesting is smart energy, and specifically around small business reporting requirements. Now, for those of you that actually are part of, say, a startup or are part of a small business, you'll know that they actually have to report on their carbon footprint. But it's very difficult. It's also incredibly inconsistent. And they have to actually look at the financial impact of their carbon footprint across certain metrics. Well, interestingly enough, there's an initiative called Perseus. And Perseus wasn't the one that brought fire to man. I think that was Prometheus. Perseus slayed Medusa. That's it. Perseus slayed Medusa. So how do we slay the Medusa of regulatory reporting for carbon footprint? It's about actually combining those different data sets, smart energy, finance, and interestingly, the supply chain. So understanding how your particular activities affect everyone else in the value chain that you work with that actually start to add up to additional carbon footprint. And again, this is required by law for these small businesses to report. So we're looking at how to actually pull smart data or smart energy data from the smart meters along the value chain, and then look at that impact in terms of the financing and how much that actually costs, literally from a pounds and pence perspective. And this is an active initiative going on right now that actually has cross-sector, public, and by I mean government, support. And it's live and in the market right now, and interestingly enough, the banks have a vested interest in this because they're sitting on a ton of data that they also have to report back on the carbon footprint of their assets and of their book of business. So by blending all of this, we actually can support small businesses in their reporting requirements. The banks get support in their reporting requirements, and we actually understand how we can work towards net zero. Open property. Anybody ever tried to purchase a home? You survived? Imagine if you actually could have all of that digital, that entire process done digitally. Looking at land registry records, looking at the actual property composition, the health, we're doing the survey, you understand what that looks like, and blending that with your financial position in order to secure a mortgage. But also, and you'll see another example of this, blending that with the green rating for the home itself. But if we started to look at property differently and the exchange of that information, we'd cut down on time, We'd also cut down on complexity, and we'd cut down on decision making. Because all of those steps are incredibly time capital heavy. And if we wanted to cut down the acquisition of a property from, say, 9 months, which is not typical, that's actually quite fast, to maybe 3 months, wouldn't that actually change the dynamic of housing in this country? It would also mean that we could secure people on the property ladder faster. And as we well know, financial health is very dependent upon property ownership. But open property and smart property is one of the use cases that's live and in the market. Green homes. I actually advise a company that looks at the book of business for a bank and how they can improve the energy rating of that particular mortgage portfolio, but also how that impacts their clients' and customers' lives when it comes to energy consumption and efficiency. And of course, with cost of living crisis, this has been mentioned ad nauseum because we're facing it each and every day, each and every minute. That actually has a material impact on the financial health and the pocketbook of each one of us. So what if we had an asset, our most important investment asset, that we were able to green up, but the result of that, even if we didn't believe in climate change, and if anyone in this room is a climate denier, come see me later, I've got something to tell you. Usually involves a slap across the face and a call to Jesus conversation. But what if we were able to actually improve that? It's an amazing thing to contribute to energy efficiency, to the reduction of carbon footprint, and to also being warm in the middle of an absolute Arctic blast in January. It also means that we can climate control the inside of our homes when we're facing some really, really funky weather outside. It's an interesting concept of being able to pull that all together, but have your bank be at the nexus of that and facilitate access to credit to finance those upgrades, from solar panels to additional insulation, to changing out your windows, to any number of different things that make your home greener but more efficient and also much more comfortable. And smart nutrition? Yes. Imagine if you actually had the detailed level of information at the point of sale in your grocery mart, even in your corner shop, and starting to blend that with your day-to-day consumption of what you ingest, maybe even making recommendations about what you should be buying, giving you recipes, giving you ideas of the amount of sugar, giving you idea of the amount of damaged processed food, but also pointing you in directions of healthy, affordable home whole food. Interestingly enough, your health outcomes are very much dictated by your choices at the till. So if we started to blend that the register level, the SKU level detail of what you're consuming, along with some of your behavioral habits and how you finance that, we can make a fundamental impact on your health, but also on your wallet. That's what smart data is. It's taking all sorts of different data sets, blending them, mixing them all up, and giving an output that actually benefits you and your choices at the end of the day. In order to do that, there are some things that need to be in place, and this is where organizations like FData actually come into play. To advocate for this, we advocate for small businesses. Most of our members are FinTechs, but I also work collaboratively with the banks on a day-to-day basis, as well as card schemes, other intermediaries. And we represent a number of different members that span the gamut of finance. It's not just about transactional data, it's about everything under the sun related to finance. And what we do is we ensure that we work with government, policy, and regulators to establish certain core components that allow for this data sharing to happen, again, in a safe and secure manner, with a proper liability framework that means you are protected if something goes wrong, that you are made whole if there's an anomaly in the process, and that your data, fundamentally, it's protected, and there's a way to claw it back, there's a way to manage it, and there's an absolute way for you to be in perfect control of that across every single institution or firm that you share that data with. And some of these core components to building an infrastructure that allows for this type of data sharing are listed behind me. First and foremost is an explicit consumer data right. We have something along those lines in PSD2 and GDPR, but it's very specifically just related to transactional information. But the principle is that anything that you generate Any activity that creates a digital footprint that is directly related to you and your behavior is yours to share. It is not the firm or the institution with whom you have that business relationship where that digital behavior is actually created. They are merely custodians of your data. And you have the right to direct them to share that information with another accredited, regulated firm. We want to expand this across all of the verticals in finance, but also across every single industry and sector in which you have a digital relationship. In certain jurisdictions, there is something called the consumer data right, CDR. For example, in Australia, it is explicitly written in law that a consumer has that right and ownership of that data, and they should be able to direct it as they choose. We're working on getting that more explicitly stated within the DDP as an outcome of the DPDI bill, as well as the secondary legislation across the different industries that we'll see that will set up these data sharing economies. So that is a lot of the work that I focus on, is ensuring that every consumer, small business, even corporate, because under the law they're people, have that right. The other component is interoperability and scalability of the tech infrastructure. So we look at standards, technical standards, API standards, for example. We also look at the consent and authentication approach. There are several steps, but there are also several principles to that. We look at something called a trust framework. Trust framework is how you actually monitor those firms that have the right to accept your data and process your data. It's a whitelist of sorts, but we have to verify that every moment that there's a data call or a call to the API. We have to verify that those who are actually exchanging the data on behalf of the consumer are in good standing, are regulated, accredited, and will comply with the law. So there is an oversight to this. So how do you actually set up an infrastructure that fundamentally works but ensures reliability, redundancy, because we always need to make sure that data is available and that those endpoints are always active and they conform and perform to a certain standard, but also that they can speak to one another. And that is one of the major challenges about building data sharing economies, is ensuring that there's interoperable standards. There won't be a single standard to rule them all. There is no ring, unfortunately, because that would make a fantastic narrative, but that's not the case. So they're competing standards that have different functionalities and enable different outcomes. And we have to reconcile that, not just from the sharing point, but also from the data syntax, structure, and nomenclature. So a lot of work goes into ensuring that we can be interoperable, but also that we can scale this. And the simplicity of the scaling is what matters. Digital ID. We've tried it in this country a few times. It's been a bit of a lead balloon. But what's fundamental is you have to be able to identify the person and identify the permissions around that person to ensure that it's safe, secure, and permissioned in the sharing. So we're working on what digital ID looks like in the UK, but also in other countries across the globe. And I also work on the digital ID side in Europe. And there are several regions that already have state-sanctioned digital IDs that have enabled a lot more friction-free data sharing. And friction is not the experience, but friction meaning it takes less time because we can authenticate very quickly, and there's a standard repetition and process around verifying the ID of the person sharing. It's a critical component to having a fully digital, data-oriented economy. And the other is consent management, and I will wax on about consent until I put you and everyone else in the room to sleep. I won't do that. I'll do that during the break. But consent is incredibly important, and it is the fundamental principle on which all data sharing should be based. So, we're almost at a network break. I had one last slide, and it was fantastic. It was a road sign that said, "Don't block the intersection." It was a great pun, and unfortunately, it's been cut. And it was supposed to be like the essence of my punchline. So I'm truly disappointed because I want to leave you with a sense of humor, but also a really strong message. FinTech, while you're focused on finance, please look above the parapet. It is really about intersectionality of data, multi-sector, data blending. It is the smoothie of technology and the smoothie of product and services. It blends everything that you essentially need into a delicious, delicious experience. Look above the parapet. Start to think about what other data sets would be interesting for your own consumption and what would materially help your consumers and clients. And don't block the intersection. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Gela. And thank you all for coming. That wraps up the first morning session. I'm Ryan Walsh, Marketing Events Executive at FinTech North. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed it. We've had some really brilliant and inspirational speakers on stage this morning. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for me to briefly share the stage with those speakers as well. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Joe, I guess. And as well, Louis, if you're around, this is a brilliant opportunity for a new LinkedIn photo. So if you're getting some shots, that'd be brilliant. So yeah, I won't keep you guys too long. I'll let you guys go get a coffee. We're back in here at 11:10. We've got a keynote from MasterCard, brand sponsors MasterCard, from Village Solutions, our headline sponsors Lenvi, and we're going to take a deep dive into Liverpool's FinTech ecosystem with Julian and a panel. So yeah, that wraps things up, and we'll see you back here at 11:10. Thank you.